The phrase "jump the shark," the term we all use when a TV show loses the plot, was coined in 1985 by a college student named Sean Connolly, and it took another 12 years before John Hines' website, jumptheshark.com, pushed it into the mainstream. One throwaway moment on one aging sitcom gave us the vocabulary to describe one of television's most fascinating failure modes, the reinvention that makes everything worse. Today, we're counting down 10 American TV shows from the 70s through the mid-2000s that looked at what was working, decided to change it anyway, and paid the price in ratings, reputation, or both. Some of these you'll remember vividly. Some of the behind-the-scenes stories will genuinely surprise you, and a couple of the entries might push you to rethink what you thought you already knew about these shows. Before we get into it, if you love TV history, classic sitcoms, and the occasional Hollywood disaster story, hit that like button and subscribe. We do this kind of deep dive regularly, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Let's count it down. Number 10. Ellen, 1997-1998. This one requires some nuance before we get into it because it doesn't fit as neatly into the disaster category as everything else on this list. ABC's Ellen premiered in 1994, starring Ellen DeGeneres as a bookstore owner named Ellen Morgan, and for 3 seasons it delivered a perfectly enjoyable, mid-tier sitcom, nothing earth-shattering, but with a loyal audience and a likable lead. That changed on April 30th, 1997, with an episode that would alter television history in ways nobody could fully predict at the time. The episode, nicknamed the Puppy Episode by the production team, featured Ellen Morgan coming out as gay, running parallel to DeGeneres' own real life coming out at exactly the same moment. 42 million people watched it. An Emmy for Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series followed, along with a Peabody Award, and by every external measure, the episode landed as a genuine cultural triumph. But here's the thing. The coming out episode wasn't what broke the show. What broke the show was the season that came after it. ABC's own president described the problem directly. The 5th season became a program where the lead character's sexuality was the subject of nearly every single episode, every single week. The variety that had made the show watchable disappeared, replaced by a single relentless theme week after week. Ratings dropped sharply, and in May 1998, ABC canceled the series after 5 seasons and 109 episodes. DeGeneres argued the cancellation owed more to anti-gay backlash than to any creative failure, and that argument carries real weight. The truth is probably a mixture of both forces working at once. What's undeniable, though, is that the reinvention shattered the show's identity, and Ellen Morgan as a character never recovered from it. DeGeneres herself, of course, recovered spectacularly. Her daytime talk show launched 6 years later and ran for nearly 2 decades. But that's a whole other conversation. Number 9. Moonlighting, 1987-1989. Anyone who watched television in the mid-80s remembers Moonlighting and remembers it with genuine affection. Bruce Willis, Sybil Shepherd, crackling dialogue, broken fourth walls, mystery plots that somehow turned into screwball comedy. The show operated on a frequency that nothing else on network TV was broadcasting, and the entire thing ran on one question. Would Maddie Hayes and David Addison ever get together? Season 3 gave the audience its answer. I Am Curious. Maddie aired in March of 1987 as the most watched episode in the show's history, and the pairing of Maddie and David became Exhibit A in what the industry started calling the Moonlighting curse. The theory that resolving a will-they-won't-they relationship destroys the audience's reason to keep watching, and that's where the story gets complicated. Because creator Glenn Gordon Caron spent years pushing back on that exact narrative. His argument, stated bluntly in a 1999 Entertainment Weekly interview, was that the coupling itself wasn't the killer. What actually gutted Season 4 was production chaos of a kind that would have wrecked any show. Sybil Shepherd was carrying a high-risk pregnancy. Willis was off filming Die Hard. Caron had pulled his attention toward his own film work. The result was a season where the 2 leads the show existed to put in the same room barely appeared on screen together, which is a problem when the whole series is built on their chemistry. From 9th in the Nielsen rankings in Season 3, the show fell to 49th by its final season, and ABC canceled it in May 1989. Whether the coupling or the chaos deserves more of the blame is a debate that never fully settled, but the lesson the industry took away, right or wrong, was clear. Never let the main couple get together. That lesson echoed through American television for decades. Number 8. Laverne and Shirley, 1982-1983. Laverne and Shirley launched in 1976 as a Happy Days spin-off and became a phenomenon almost overnight. pulling in more than 30 million viewers a week on the strength of Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams as best friends, roommates, and brewery workers in Milwaukee. The chemistry between them wasn't just good, it was the entire architecture of the show. The move to California had already shifted things. The show survived that, more or less, because both leads were still there. Season 8 in 1982 removed the one thing that couldn't be replaced. Cindy Williams was pregnant, and a dispute over her shooting schedule and working conditions around her due date escalated into a legal fight. After filming only 2 episodes of the season, Williams walked and Shirley Feeney was written off as newly married and relocating. Penny Marshall was left to carry the show alone. The result was as predictable as it was painful. Gary Marshall, who created the show, put it plainly. Nobody really worked as a replacement, and the show without Cindy Williams was like Lucy without Ethel. The same sets, the same premise, and an absence at the center that the audience felt immediately. Ratings declined sharply. The show fell out of the Nielsen Top 30, and ABC pulled the plug in May 1983 after 8 seasons and 178 episodes. 30 million viewers a week had become a cancellation. From that height to that ending, the distance turned out to be exactly one missing name in the title. Number 7. Happy Days, 1977 and beyond. Happy Days is the home of the most famous reinvention moment in television history, and also one of the most persistently misunderstood. September 20th, 1977, Season 5, Episode 3. Fonzie straps on swim trunks over his leather jacket, water skis over a shark, and television folklore is born, or at least, the seed of it is planted, because the actual phrase "jump the shark" wouldn't emerge from Sean Connolly's college dorm room until 1985, and John Hines' website wouldn't put it in front of the whole country until 1997. Here's what the ratings actually showed. That episode ranked 3rd for the week it aired, pulled in over 30 million viewers, and carried a 50-plus share. Happy Days stayed at or near number 1 for years after that stunt. Fred Fox Jr., a writer on the show, went on record in the Los Angeles Times pointing out that if the shark episode genuinely started a downward spiral, it's hard to explain 6 more seasons and 164 additional episodes. Henry Winkler, when asked about it years later, put it simply, the show stayed number 1 for years, and he had nothing to apologize for. What actually damaged Happy Days was quieter and slower. Ron Howard, Richie Cunningham, the character the show was originally built around, left after Season 7 in 1980, frustrated by a network that wouldn't take his directing ambition seriously, and Donnie Most left with him. Ted McGinley came in as a replacement character. The ratings ground downward through the early 80s, from the top of the charts to 28th in 1982 and then 63rd in 1983, before cancellation came in May 1984. Happy Days gave us the vocabulary for every reinvention disaster on this list. The irony is that its own real disaster had almost nothing to do with a shark. Number 6. Three's Company, 1980 to 1981. By 1979 and 1980, Three's Company ranked among the most watched programs in America. John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, and Suzanne Summers as 3 roommates navigating misunderstandings and a suspicious landlord. Light, funny, and delivering enormous ratings. And then Suzanne Summers asked to be paid what she believed she was worth. Before Season 5, Summers and her husband and manager Alan Hamel approached the network with a salary demand they believed matched her male co-star's earnings. ABC refused, and rather than negotiate to a workable resolution, the network made a decision that was equal parts punitive and strategically baffling. They kept Summers on the show but reduced her to brief phone call cameos, filmed separately, under what were described as guard-like conditions, while a replacement was quietly identified. What followed, by Summers' own account, amounted to a public smear campaign designed to frame her as greedy and out of control, making the network appear reasonable by contrast. Hamill recalled being told that the network intended to make an example of her as visibly as possible. After the season concluded, she was fired. Jenna Lee Harrison arrived as Chrissy's cousin, and later Priscilla Barnes took over as a new roommate named Terry. The audience didn't transfer. The show stumbled through a few more seasons without recapturing its peak, and the story itself has been substantially reframed in the decades since. Summers is now widely understood as an early equal pay pioneer in Hollywood. She and Ritter reconciled before his death in 2003, and she passed away in October of 2023. But the short-term damage to the show was real, and keeping her on in a diminished capacity before firing her was one of the stranger self-inflicted wounds in network television history. Number 5. Bewitched, 1969-1972. Some of you will need to set aside the assumption that older television was simpler and less chaotic than what came after, because this next one is as messy and as human as anything on this list. Bewitched launched on ABC in 1964 with Elizabeth Montgomery as Samantha, a witch married to a mortal named Darren Stevens, and Dick York in the husband's role. A warm, funny performance that earned him an Emmy nomination in 1968, 5 seasons into the run. And then, with no warning to the audience, York was gone. The reason was genuinely tragic. A serious back injury sustained years earlier while filming a movie had led to a dependency on painkillers. And during production of Season 5 in 1969, York collapsed on set and could not continue. Dick Sargent, who in a strange coincidence, had been offered the original role back in 1964 but was unavailable due to another contract, stepped in for Seasons 6, 7, and 8. No explanation was offered to viewers. One week Darren was Dick York, the next week Darren was Dick Sargent, and the show pressed forward as if nothing had changed. The audience noticed immediately. During York's final season, Bewitched held the 11th spot in the Nielsen rankings. After Sargent took over, the show slid to 24th and kept falling, and ABC's decision to shuffle the time slot put it in direct competition, first with the Carol Burnett Show, and then with the early seasons of All In, The Family. Cancellation came in 1972. What the Bewitched situation demonstrated more clearly than almost any other case in television history is that audiences form bonds with specific actors rather than with characters as abstract constructions. Putting a different face in the same role and calling it the same show is a theory that sounds plausible in a production meeting and collapses the moment actual viewers encounter it. 4. Twin Peaks, Season 2, 1990 to 1991. Some television failures are the result of bad decisions made by people who didn't understand what they had. The Twin Peaks situation is one of those, and it's worth taking a moment to appreciate just how much was at stake. David Lynch and Mark Frost's Twin Peaks premiered on ABC in April of 1990, and the pilot drew more than 34 million viewers, the highest-rated TV movie of that entire season. 14 Emmy nominations followed. The show operated on a completely singular frequency, surreal, dark, funny, terrifying, and built entirely on a central mystery. Who killed Laura Palmer? Lynch and Frost had no intention of answering that question quickly. The mystery was designed to sustain the show for years, and that design was working. And then ABC, with then network president Bob Iger among those applying the pressure, pushed the producers to resolve it midway through Season 2. Audiences were restless. The mystery needed an answer. Lynch and Frost complied, and David Lynch largely walked away from the show the moment they did. His words on the subject, delivered with characteristic directness, were that they had killed the goose that laid the golden egg. Iger himself acknowledged in his 2019 memoir that pushing for the early reveal produced an immediate decline in quality. The audience numbers told the same story. After the killer was revealed, viewership dropped episode by episode. ABC moved the show to Saturday nights, one of the least watched nights of the week at the time, and the series ended on a cliffhanger that went unresolved for 26 years, until Lynch returned to finish his story on Showtime in 2017 with Twin Peaks: The Return. The network version never recovered from the moment an executive decided they understood the show's value better than the man who created it, and the creator eventually got the last word. Number 3. The Dukes of Hazzard, 1982 to 1983. We are in the top 3 now, and this next one is the cleanest, most undeniable example of a self-inflicted collapse on this entire list. The Dukes of Hazzard arrived on CBS in January of 1979, and by the 1980 to 81 season, it had climbed to number 2 in all of American television, second only to Dallas, which aired directly afterward on CBS's Friday lineup, meaning the network was essentially running the 2 most watched hours of television in the country back-to-back. At its peak, roughly 22 million people a week were tuning in to watch Bo and Luke Duke jump that orange Dodge Charger over things. And then John Schneider and Tom Wopat went on strike. The dispute centered on salary and on merchandising royalties. The General Lee had become one of the most popular toy cars in America, and Schneider and Wopat wanted a share of what that was generating. CBS and the producers refused to negotiate seriously, and what they did instead still defies easy explanation. They kept the show running without the 2 leads, introducing cousins named Coy Duke, played by Byron Cherry, and Vance Duke, played by Christopher Mayer. Bo and Luke were written out in roughly 24 seconds of stock footage, and a Waylon Jennings voiceover explained as having left for the NASCAR circuit. The scripts that had been written for Bo and Luke were handed to Cherry and Mayer with the character names literally crossed out and replaced. Series creator Guy Waldron later admitted that making the replacements direct clones was a mistake. From 6th in the Nielsen ratings with a 22.6 rating, the show fell completely out of the top 30 during the Coy and Vance season, not a modest dip but a total exit from the rankings. The dispute eventually settled. Bo and Luke returned in an episode called Welcome Back. Bo and Luke and the audience came back briefly, but the show never re-entered the top 30 and it ended in 1985. Coy and Vance lasted 17 episodes. 17 episodes so disliked that they remain fan shorthand for everything that can go wrong when a network decides the audience won't notice. They've replaced the only reason anyone was watching in the first place. Number 2, Roseanne, Season 9, 1996-1997. Roseanne premiered on ABC in October of 1988 and spent years as one of the most honest family shows American television had ever produced. The Connor family wasn't aspirationally working class. The way sitcom families sometimes are, they genuinely worried about money, and the comedy came directly from that tension. Each of the first 6 seasons finished in the Nielsen Top 5. And then, in the 200th episode on September 24, 1996, the Connors won $108 million in the lottery. Overnight, the premise that had connected the show to millions of working people evaporated. Private jets, spas, a terrorist plot on a train. Season 9 delivered storylines that felt like they belonged to a completely different show wearing the Connor family faces. From a consistent top 5 fixture, Roseanne dropped to 35th place in the Nielsen ratings. Then came the finale, and this is where it gets worse. On May 20th, 1997, the 2-part closer revealed that everything the audience had been watching that year was fiction. Roseanne, the character, had been writing a book, and the Season 9 storylines were her invented wish fulfillment. The real version of events? Dan Connor had died from his Season 8 heart attack after all. Time magazine called it off the rails and drew a direct line between the character, lottery fantasy, and Barr's own arc of becoming famous and losing touch with the audience that built her career. What makes the Roseanne case particularly interesting here is that the dream season reveal wasn't the original reinvention. It was the attempted repair of the original reinvention. The lottery win broke the show, and the retroactive erasure of the lottery win broke what was left in a different way. When the 2018 revival explicitly restored Dan to life and pretended Season 9 had never happened, it premiered to enormous numbers, which confirmed that the audience was always willing to return, as long as someone was willing to admit the mistake first. Number 1. Dallas 1985-1987. Dallas premiered on CBS in 1978 and spent the early 80s as not just the most-watched show in America, but one of the most-watched programs on the planet. The primetime soap about the Ewing oil family, with Larry Hagman's Jr. as the scheming center of gravity and Patrick Duffy's Bobby as his morally intact brother, was appointment television on a scale that barely exists anymore. And then Duffy decided to leave, and the character of Bobby Ewing was killed by a hit-and-run car in the Season 7 finale in May of 1985. The ratings answered immediately. Dallas dropped from 2nd to 6th in the Nielsen rankings during the Bobby-less year, a slide that some accounts place even steeper, with the show losing somewhere around 10% of its overall audience. Dynasty moved in and claimed the top nighttime soap crown that Dallas had held. The show that had seemed untouchable turned out to be exactly as vulnerable as everything else when its moral center walked out the door. Showrunner Leonard Katzman engineered the return. Larry Hagman lobbied Duffy personally. Duffy came back, and the mechanism they chose to bring Bobby back was the boldest and most absurd retcon in American television history. On the 16th of May, 1986, the Season 9 finale, Pam Ewing walked into her bathroom and found Bobby alive in the shower, very much not dead. The Season 10 premiere, airing on September 26, 1986, then revealed that the entire previous season had been Pam's dream, every episode, all of it, gone. The Associated Press called it the most famous shower scene since Psycho, and the Dream Season device has been lampooned and referenced in everything from Newhart's legendary series finale to Family Guy ever since. Dallas survived. It ran until 1991, but the top spot never came back, and the show's credibility took a hit it never fully absorbed. And then there's the detail that captures the whole thing perfectly. Victoria Principal, who played Pam, filmed her reaction to Bobby's return without Patrick Duffy actually present in the shower. She was reacting to someone else, a stand-in who would be edited out later, the most famous moment of reconnection in soap opera history, and the two people it involved weren't even in the room together. That's not just behind-the-scenes trivia. That's the perfect metaphor for what Dallas Reinvention actually was, the appearance of something real, assembled from parts that didn't quite fit. Conclusion. Step back from all 10 of these stories and 3 things keep surfacing. Audiences bond with specific people, not positions. Casting someone new as Darren or Bo and Luke or Shirley and calling it the same show is a theory that collapses the moment real viewers encounter it, and the ratings prove it every single time. The thing the show is fundamentally about is also the thing that cannot be touched. Twin Peaks was the Laura Palmer mystery. Moonlighting was the unresolved tension. Roseanne was the experience of being broke and working class. The moment any of those things changed, the show that replaced it was a different show wearing familiar clothes. And in almost every case on this list, the reinvention started with a fixable problem, a contract dispute, an actor's health, an executive's anxiety about ratings. That became unfixable because someone panicked, and panic almost never produces good creative decisions. The phrase jumping the shark came from Happy Days, and as we established today, Happy Days actually held together reasonably well after that stunt. The shows that truly jumped the shark are the ones where the people in charge looked at what made their show work, decided it needed to be something different, and then watched the audience quietly walk out the door. Television history is full of these moments, and honestly, that's a large part of what makes it so worth looking back on. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button, leave a comment telling us which of these reinventions you remember most, or which one surprised you today, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next.